things I remember about Brett in the darkroom, I think came from Edward most directly, is the visor.
Oh, yes.
And Brett had a lot of visors actually. They got pretty cruddy over time, but in the darkroom he always had a visor. And he had certain set things, but in Hawaii particularly, the safe light was a red painted light bulb.
They dip them in,
Yeah.
dip them in the red paint.
And the one in Hawaii had cracks and everything. You could see the thing over.
Well, the visor, I mean, you know why he wore a visor. I mean, I never realized it. You know, this is, you know, the time when he's using an enlarger and everything like that, but the reason why he wore a visor was because in the darkroom here, they used 100, 200, and 300 watt light bulbs to do contact prints.
Yep.
And so you've got this blaring light bulb, and the visor was just to shade your eyes from it. And he never got over the habit of not wearing the visor, even though he didn't need it. And Randy and I were talking about that. It took years to figure out why is he wearing this visor in the darkroom.
Mm-hmm.
But it was that sort of that, you know.
Yeah, that's just a habit you pick up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it had a utilitarian
Yeah.
purpose,
Right.
but that he just
Right.
continued. Now, as I said, I was only in the darkroom watching him probably just 2 or 3 times.
Right.
But even that first day sitting on the concrete floor, and the time flew by, by the way. I mean, it was just mesmerizing to watch him. But I noticed that he talked to himself. Did you notice that also?
Yeah. I mean.
And he would refer to himself as BW.
Mm-hmm. Well,
BW,
yeah.
don't do that, you know, or something.
Yeah, there was a definite,
Yeah.
you know, conversation that was going on, and you know, when I was there helping him, I mean, you could see that he would lapse into that.
Yeah.
But then he knew that I was there, you know, so then you could see him, because so much of his printing time was all done by himself. He had no
But there were,
assistants.
you know, in the big print project, there were conversations. And, you know, in the darkroom, the conversation that he had with himself, or if you were there, was sort of a part of the dance
Mm-hmm.
that it takes to do it. And, you know, it was Brett, just like everything else, you know. Again, some of the same sayings, but you know, what are the things you heard the most? You know, when I was in Hawaii, I learned to say, "Oh," people would call.
Yeah.
I had his voice down.
Oh,
People would start
the
talking.
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, hello.
Yeah, really.
Hey,
good.
Bob.
Whoever answered the phone, and it's funny, for years I did the same thing. Hello. You know, and they go, Brad? And I go, I couldn't go beyond just the hello. You know?
Yeah, I'd start laughing. But people would just start talking.
Yeah.
Then he took a nap every day. That was his big thing.
Right.
You know, and so in Hawaii or in Carmel Valley, when I was with him, he'd just take the phone off the hook. And it'd go beep, 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 beep for a period of time till it
Then
quit.
the funny shot.
And then whatever vehicle was being used for photography was a camera car.
Right.
And you used the term sex booth.
Yeah, well, sex booths were very important to him. That's another thing. You look at his closet, and there were like 4 shirts, 3 pairs of pants, and then he had his, you know, depending on, he had, you know, a pair of tennis shoes, and then his sex boots, you know, which he always wore with his leather jacket. So there was this very simple, there again, very simple attire that he wore. Didn't confuse him, didn't make it, you know, any, you know, this is what, if he went out for an opening, he wore the leather jacket. For a while he had corduroy, but yeah, very, very simple.
Hawaii was just very basic stuff. He was very relaxed, probably like he would have if he was anywhere like Mexico or whatever, but was always neat, but not pretentious when I knew him later on.
But he was always quitting drinking.
Oh,
He always had angina, you know, and his doctor was like, oh, you got angina, you got to stop drinking. And so, I mean, normally he would drink, hard booze, a couple good glasses of it, and then go to bed. He's going to bed at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, depending on the season. And so you'd go, so drinking and smoking were his big problems. And he'd go, well, Bob, I'm on the wagon. Because I'd come out there and work, and after working, the cocktail time, and I always drank hard booze. And, well, I got you, Jim Beam, but I'm on the wagon, and I'm just drinking sherry. And so he had these fucking, excuse my French, big balls of cheap ass sherry, and he had a glass. I mean, it was a friggin' tumbler. Yeah,
I'm on the way.
I'm only one of these a night, Which is the worst thing you could do, for that is drinking sherry.
His thing about it, if it came from Hawaii, that he would drink the sherry, cooking sherry, because he didn't want to drink something he liked.
Right.
Coffee was instant coffee.
Right.
He really liked a Mexican coffee. Kim got him some one time. I mean, he really liked coffee, but he felt he would drink too much if it was really good. So there was sort of this thing that he didn't have anything really good.
Yeah.
Because he might partake too much of it.
Yeah.
He also had a sweet tooth.
Yeah.
And on a day-to-day thing, there wouldn't be anything, but if we were out traveling or somebody came to visit and brought ice cream or some cookies or something, he'd be right there.
Right.
And those big Hershey almond candy bars were when we trekked off. We'd have those.
Well, and smoking was another thing. He loved the pipe, as you know, in the darkroom he'd smoke a pipe. And, flicking ashes everywhere, but there again, his doctor, he was so sort of would listen to anything his doctor said, his lawyer said, or anyone. He was just sort of there. And so the doctor said, you gotta quit smoking. And you could see it really sort of wear down because, not that he was an addictive personality, I mean, he really wasn't, but he loved his delicados, he loved, his Mexican cigarettes, and he loved his pipe. So, he'd go, Bob, I quit smoking. And I said, that's great, Brett. And he said, yeah, I threw all my pipes out in the yard. Great, yeah. And so, like, 3 weeks later, I come out there. He's out there in the friggin' weeds, and he's moving around. And I go, Brett, what are you doing? Oh, I'm looking for my pipes, Bob. He'd throw them out, come back, 3-4 weeks, a month later, get his pipes and start smoking again. It was this sort of habitual sort of reenactment of the same quitting, coming back.
Yeah, it was very. He wanted to enjoy life, but he knew that he should listen to this stuff, but it always came back to sort of this mediocrity of trying to do it. But my favorite instinctive thing, remember the paint in the pool, Kim?
Yes.
He was trying to sleep and they were.
Well, first of all, you got to tell the story. He built this pool, $40,000 pool, and this is so typical of Brett. And I remember before the pool was even built, he said, I want to do this pool, I want to make a viewing station, it's all going to be black, I'm going to do nudes. And that's great, Brett. And he did it. I mean, he spent a lot of money, and at that time he was making, pretty good money. And so when that series was over, when he finished doing the nudes, the pool sat. And he swam in it, but he didn't like the chlorine, he was very sort of touchy about the chlorine. And it just, eventually he just sat. And he stopped getting the pool guy, he didn't want to pay the pool guy. And it started to get mossy.
Yeah, and so one night he's trying to sleep and there's a bullfrog out there croaking away and everything. And Brett did not like to be disturbed once he went to bed. That was if you wanted to make an enemy of him forever, it would be like to wake him up. Anyway, so he couldn't deal with this. And so he's like, he was so instinctive about what he would do, so what he thinks like out of his head, like to keep this thing, he goes and gets buckets of paint and throws him in
Oil-based
the
paint.
pool. That's going to take care of the frog. You know, he's just trying to sleep. He just grabs what's at hand. And I seen it cold out there when I lived with him out there, where it was rainy and cold, and he didn't have enough firewood, and then the firewood was wet and whatever, and he'd actually go through and figure out a piece of furniture he didn't want, a chair or something like that, break it up.
I think Brett had a great respect for Ansel as a friend.
Yeah.
I don't think Ansel's photography was Brett's cup of tea. I think that Brett felt that Ansel, in the earlier years, was more successful as a pianist than a photographer. But they had, you know, kind of a jousting friendship relationship. In the years when I moved up here in '79 to go to work for Ansel, and as much as Brett guarded his privacy religiously, most people that came to Ansel and Virginia's house had arranged beforehand to visit. Brett would just show up, and it was okay. It was never a problem, but he would just tap on the door and come on in. And it was odd because he would not have tolerated that of others, but it was never looked on in a strange way. But whenever I would see Brett, which wasn't that often, but he'd say, Goose Ansel for and you know, Goose Pasha. He would call Ansel Pasha. And then I'd be going to run an errand or something, or going out to Brett's house, and he'd say, "Tell Brett he's a silver halide Siegfried."
Yeah, right.
So there was this jousting, but I think beneath that there was a very great intimacy.
Yeah.
They both. I don't think either of them understood the other. I mean, it's like.
And they weren't going to.
No.
I mean, they came to each other, they respected each other, and then they just backed off, I think. It wasn't
So how much older was Ansel?
Well, he was born in 1902,
Okay.
and so Brett was 1911. So 9 years.
Okay.
9 years. So some difference. But,
Yeah.
But, at that, when you get up into those ages,
it gets closer and
Yeah.
closer. as
closer and
time
closer,
passes.
right.
But I mean,
He never ever said anything bad about
But
it.
Ansel was friends with Edward to
Yeah.
begin with.
I think Ansel had
Right.
great reverence
Yeah.
for Edward, and they were certainly close friends. They you know, obviously had a considerable communication. I think that they both respected one another, and it's safe to say that Ansel had a great regard and respect for Edward as a photographer and an artist. And he confided many things in, you know, the communications that have emerged since he's passed away. I mean, Ansel was, along with, I believe it was Nancy, as opposed to Beaumont, but I could be wrong about that, you know, went through and razored the day books, took out the areas that they thought would not be, you know, appropriate for others to see.
Yeah, but I think that connection between, because I used to read the letters in the old darkroom, you know, it's before Dad sold the collection. There were stacks and stacks of letters, just in boxes in our darkroom. And I'd read them, you know, and there were letters between Ansel and Edward, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, about different chemistries, about this, about that. I mean, they had a wonderful...
Yeah, I Mortensen thing.
Yeah. Well, they had this great sort of connection, you know, and you look at the photograph over here, the two of them together, you can see Ansel's reverence for Edward. Edward, the little guy, 5 foot, 4, Ansel, this big guy. And you just look at the body language, and Ansel's just bent over so he doesn't tower over Edward. And two totally different schools of photography, and you know, not one is right or wrong. I mean, it's just two different ways of seeing it, you know, and their love for each other, I think, was really, really genuine, you know.
That great portrait he did against the tree, Edward.
Yeah.
And then in the book here, I don't see very often, is the nice portrait he did of Brett.
Mm-hmm.
Just, yeah.
You've seen the photograph that was made the same day as the portrait, just of the roots of the tree.
Yeah, it's just...
You know, they were just out photographing, just doing something together. very casual undertaking, I think.
Yeah. Well, and history has a way of embellishing and marginalizing everything. You know, and you really don't know. I mean, we all have different visions of it. I remember, you know, sitting with Brett and his sort of take on Ansel, you know. And I think the whole Weston family, you know, saw Ansel as a sellout because he made money, but I looked at it, damn howdy, you know, if he can make money at it, great, you know.
Brett did what he wanted to do, Edward did what he wanted to do, and Ansel did what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And part of that was getting his work out any way he could and a different kind of thing. Because everybody, when I first came here, you thought of Ansel as the pure photographer that just existed for photography in this, you know, sense, this God. And you never thought about that somebody made money, that was the idea of it.
Well, I mean, he took commercial assignments until 1970.
Right, and so
I mean,
that's,
he's 68 years old.
Right.
but you know, he's at Yosemite and he's doing postcards or what, you know, whatever it takes about a place he's excited about, but he's getting the work out.
Which is nothing wrong with that.
No,
it's-
but
it's-
I don't think people realize that sometimes that everybody's different on how they approach their work.
Well, there's a lot of photographers on the peninsula at the time, right? I mean,
Yeah, but Ansel doesn't move here until 62, so...
62, so he's kind of a late comer. Really.
Yeah, he was a San Francisco boy,
Right.
and certainly he came down here regularly to see Edward primarily.
Well,
And
a
he had
lot of
other
the
friends.
center of stuff was in San Francisco at a given time. F-64
Right.
showing all those people. And, yeah.
But Brett used to feel comfortable. I mean, it was late in both of their lives, but you know, he'd be over for cocktails or a social engagement, and Ansel had a gallery space where he had some prints that were regularly on display, and then he would change them. They were literally put up with push pins, literally
Right.
on those boards, and Brett would come over and say, Ansel, abstraction.
Right.
So one
Did
time,
he talk like
Oh,
that?
yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, this is great.
Oh, yeah.
I've never heard anybody do the voice.
No,
This is
the
great.
voices.
Well, he had this, you can hear it in the tape, but when he talked about different things, there's this sort of soft, like that, nuance.
It was very predictable. We should go and look at the Porsche 920. It's a Brancusi on wheel.
You know where that came from? I thought that was. I'm
No.
hanging out there.
Right.
He's taking a nap, so I'm just looking through magazines. There's a
There's a-
damn brochure from Porsche, double page spread. A Brancusi on wheels.
Oh, wow.
So Brett would make these comments, and Ansel one day was making some moonrise prints, and something went wrong with one of them, so he just threw it out of the developer into the tray, face down. And Phyllis Donahue, who did his spotting and retouching for a long, long time, she knew how to do selenium toning of prints or help with that, but she was not a photographer and couldn't make a print of her life.
Right.
But really good at printing. So we were going in to do the second fixing and the toning and the hypo-clearing agent and getting ready to put them to wash. And she pulls this thing up. It's all chemically stained. And so she said, what happened to this? I said, well, he'd misdodged or burned it, and he saw it when it came up, so we just threw it in there. So I put it in the fixer. And then after we get done toning, I buzzed Ansel on the intercom. I said, hey, when you have a second, come into the darkroom, I want to show you something. So I've got it sitting right as you walk into the holding bath. And I own the print. It is definitely one of a kind. And it's all streaked and weird. But you can see it's a moonrise, 16 by 20. And he walks in and like this, he goes, oh my God, it's a Holocaust over Hernandez. And so he says, let's mount it. So we mount it up, and then he signs it, Man Bay. The second cousin instead of the surrealist Man Ray.
Yeah.
So he puts it up on the thing, and Brett's coming over for dinner or something. And Brett comes in, Brett, I want to show you this new print. And Brett comes over, he's got his pipe, and he doesn't know what's going on.
Right, of course, Brett.
But that was just a wonder. I wish there was a video camera there, because Brett doesn't know how he's supposed to react. And then Ansel starts laughing. But
Because Brett's abstraction is.
Yes.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
None of these big
Classic.
picture postcards,
No.
moon things.
No, that's so typical. It's like the holy water, the Amadol versus Dectol. It's holy water. Holier than thou, Ansel. But there was that sort of, really sort of, and I think it's with all of us. I mean, all of us that are out there taking pictures and stuff and photographing, it's you love to share what you're seeing with people, and how would you call it? It's a challenge to be with other photographers, seeing that you respect, seeing the same thing and photographing them together. It's not that someone can do it better than you. It's just you want to see that new vision. I mean, I do, with the people I photograph with. And I think it's that way with those guys, It wasn't someone did it better, I think it was a mutual respect on going out there and just doing the work. I mean, you see it in their work. I mean, Ansel, Edward, they all did the same stuff. I mean, to a certain extent, they all did egg slicers. They all did, views from the ocean looking down. They all challenged each other looking at different stuff. And I love that sort of aspect of it.
We talked a lot just about, that he wasn't going to live forever, and he was very comfortable kind of with the whole deal. And so we got back here from Hawaii, and we just decided that we would take a trip up and go photograph. And we ended up going up to Oregon by different ways, and really neat. We went up the coast, and then we came back down the Sierras, and stayed at Mono Lake. He hated to stay in a motel, but he had to. So he'd stay in a motel, I'd sleep in the van, whatever. We got to Mono Lake, when he's in registering, there's the town little pamphlet or whatever's got his Mono Lake thing on it, It was just kind of a great trip. We went across the Tioga Pass. It was pretty fun, but it was, looking back at it, it was just a way for him to sort of say goodbye and make this last trip. It was pretty neat. We were at Astoria or whatever on the river there, and it was all dark and moody, and there was these piers, pilings, this stuff, and then there was this ship coming. And so I had my 8x10 out, and I had it all set. I was waiting for the ship. Brett's in the van. There's this squall comes and it just dumps on me. And Brett's sitting over there laughing.
I remember it's funny because he got older and older, he got more sort of decrepit, the cameras got smaller, Randy and I would travel with him, went to Bryce, and, he would get out there, and you could see his feet were hurting him. He was out there every day photographing him. He was one of the few people that in our family that's what he did every day. I mean, he had the pain and stuff like that, but he was out photographing. And so he was in Hawaii, and Randy was out there, and then he spent a lot of time out there, and got the call that he had had a stroke. And so I'm sitting here, we're sitting in
Where was that at?
Well, he was in Hawaii.
He was in Hawaii when he had the stroke?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, I mean, he was 80-something. So we got the call, and it was just sort of surreal. I mean, you knew the guy's getting old. Mm-hmm. And so instantly, Gina and I are sitting here, and I said, I gotta go. And I sort of felt that it was, you don't, at his age, have a stroke and really come out of it too good. And we had no money at the time. And to get a instant next day ticket was $2,000 to go to Hawaii. And I said, let's get it. We couldn't afford it, but I said, I got to be there. So I called up my dad, and I said, Dad, Uncle Brett's got a stroke. He's in the hospital. And Dad just started this long story about, I can't make it. I got this, I got that. It's expensive. And I said, Dad, I'm going. I said, I got a flight out of Monterey tomorrow, connecting flight to San Francisco. I'm going there. You should be there. Hung up the phone. My dad had more money. I was just, we were pitching pennies for me to get there.
That was tough.
Put it on a credit card.
Yeah.
We didn't have any money.
Yeah. And,
I told Kimmy he had to go.
and I just, Dad, well, no, there's no reason I wouldn't have gone. Dad calls about half, okay, I'm on the plane. I mean, I actually guilted him into coming.
Mm.
Yeah. And we both, it was fun. We both flew on the same plane and got there and got to the hospital. And I mean, I have a pretty quick study on people, and he was not going to make it. Everyone was around. Erica was there. The lawyers were there. They were getting him signing contracts. He couldn't, he's just way paralyzed, and he was sitting writing X's on certain documents and stuff. And we sat and spent some time together, and you could see that he was not going to pull out of this. And everyone was so upbeat. Dad just wanted to get home. And I remember looking at him, holding his hand, and it was just, he looked at me, and I walked out, I left. I said, I'm going, Brett, I got to get home. I got work, I got a family and all this stuff. And as I walked down the hall, I heard him yell. It was the most unbelievable yell. I mean, it was just sort of like, he would never see me again, it was over. And it was just, Dad turned around, and it was just like, I would never see him again, I never did. He died. They tried to keep him alive for a little while, and it just went on for another maybe 2-3 weeks, and he died. He died in a fashion that sort of reminded me of him. Just that last sort of scream that I heard him say. It was meant for me. I know it was, because he loved what I was doing. He loved everything that it's like you. I mean, he loved us. He loved us as buddies, and we were, I think, some of his closest friends. Thank you. It was great getting together tonight with really good friends and share our stories about our beloved uncle and friend, Brett Weston.
It was a pleasure to be here. It was a lot of fun, and the time flew by.
It was great to get together and tell some of these stories and hear different views. Very worthwhile.
I think we only scratched the surface.
I think that is safe
I
to
mean,
say, and there is a possibility that some of what the people may have heard this evening was actually true.
Very small portion.
Very small portion.
Thank you. No, it is so funny because when you start thinking about it, I mean, we told a lot of stories.
We didn't get into
We didn't even get close.